I took a boat over from Panama, a speedboat from the edge of Panama to Colombia, to the edge of Colombia.
It sounds like an action movie.
Yes, it does sound like that.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jeff Callahan, founder of Become More Compelling, where we use behavior and psychology to increase your social skills and charisma. And what you're listening to today is episode 1 of Become More Compelling Radio. And I am joined today by Michaela Chung. Michaela is the founder of introvertspring.com, where she helps introverts thrive and basically be more awesome. She's lived in several different countries, Mexico, Colombia, Canada, Australia as well. She's been all over the place. She's got some very interesting stories to share today, and she is a writer. She's got her first book due out next year. She's written over 200 articles for her blog, and she's been featured in Dr. Arnie Kozak's book, The Everything Guide to the Introvert Edge, and Patricia Weber's Introvert Communication Toolkit. So without further ado, let's dive right in.
Hello, Jeff.
It is fantastic to have you on the show today.
It's great to be here.
And I'm so thrilled to have you for many reasons, but not the least, which is you're a zombie fan, and I recently found this out. So I have to ask you, if the zombie apocalypse happened right now on this podcast, what would be your first and second moves?
That is a great question, and I have given it some thought. So the first thing would be, you do have to get your zombie crew together. So you got to get people who are strong where you're not. You got to have like the smart one who can come up with a plan, the buff guy who can protect you, maybe someone who's like a cop or who's in the military, and then there's me.
I was going to ask you, which one are you?
Well, I'm a little bit of everything, because I've been thinking about this for so long that, I've come up with a little bit of a plan, and I exercise. I used to be a dancer, so I've got pretty quick reflexes. So you come up with your posse, and then the next thing is you've got to get out of the city if you're in the city. So get to a place where it's a little bit more isolated and where you can kind of hunker down and come up with your next steps. So that's about as far as I've gotten so far.
Well, that's a pretty good step. I think that's more than 80% of people. And it's so funny that you say, like, get out of the city, because I'm a weirdo, and I also have thought about this a lot, more than is any way rational. My plan is I hadn't really thought about assembling a crew. I've thought about, either going like road warrior by myself. I probably need to grab my wife and my cat. Those would be very important. But say again?
I said, you got to at least say that.
Yes, that's true. My aunt and uncle have kind of a place upstate, and that's the farm. That's where you're going if anything goes down. So I already know the location. Getting there is the hard part. What's funny is there's a really good book called Emergency by Neil Strauss, and his whole thing with that book, it isn't really zombie apocalypse, but it's more of like, if kind of shit hits the fan, what do you do? And I think that there's a place in Kansas City, Missouri, where you can do an urban escape and evasion class, where they teach you how to pick locks and blend in with crowds and stuff like that, and doing surveillance and counter surveillance. And the final test is they hood you, zip tie you, and throw you in a trunk, and then you have to make it across the city back to a safe house while being tracked by bounty hunters.
My goodness, that sounds traumatizing.
Maybe a little bit. I still would like to do it, even though I know I would be frightened. Good, like zombie preparation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we could spend the entire hour talking about zombies. We're not going to do that. Just a little icebreaker to kind of get a feel for things. But I wanted to ask you, because I was on your site and I was reading a recent post that you did. It's called "The Secret Shame of the Sensitive Introvert," and something that really struck me. It stuck out and it struck me was that the notion of shoulds in life, and that really hit home because there are all these shoulds that we experience in life. Like, I should try harder, I should be more grateful, I should give more, I should be nicer. Could you take me through your thought process when it came to writing that? What was kind of your inspiration, or maybe some shoulds in your life that you've kind of chosen to buck the trend and say, like, maybe I don't have to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really do live in a culture of shoulds. And my blog post, of course, was directed at introverts because that's my audience. But it does apply to everyone. Everybody feels the burden of the should. Whether it's broad things like, I should go to university, my life should follow this very specific path of, graduate from high school, go to college or university, get married, have kids, buy a house, buy a car, probably the house and the car before the kids. But all these things that should be done and should be done in a specific order. And for introverts, we have that. And then we also have the pressure of the social shoulds. So we should talk more. We should go out more. We should not want to spend so much time alone. And that's something that I felt a lot of guilt about growing up, and really all the way up until very recently, up until I started my website and I started writing about introversion in depth. Up until then, I really felt like I wasn't good enough because I wasn't fulfilling all of these shoulds.
That's really insightful, and I agree with you. I think that there are a lot of those should statements that are extremely toxic, because it feels like the epicenter of should is a lot of comparisons are going on. You're comparing yourself to maybe your neighbor, your friends, people that you grew up with, perhaps people that you aspire to be. And I thought it was really insightful because one of your readers, Helen, actually said that she tries to combat this by replacing should with could. And I thought that was really interesting. I'm a big fan of reframing things and just kind of examining the status quo and seeing if that's something that I'm interested in. And just that little shift of saying, well, I could, buy a house, but that's not what I want to do right now. Maybe later, maybe not. You mentioned that notion of feeling that kind of guilt or shame. There is a difference. What was that like for you? When did you first realize that you were kind of in this cycle, and how did you start to break out of that? You mentioned when it was starting your website, but could you speak to that a little bit more?
Yes, definitely. Well, the first time I had a shift in thinking regarding all this guilt and all the shoulds was when I discovered I was an introvert in college. It was during a psychology class, and we took a personality test, which helped us to determine if we were an introvert or an extrovert. And like most people, I didn't really know what an introvert was. I thought I knew, but it turns out I didn't. And I discovered that an introvert is actually somebody who simply needs more time alone, and it's a personality type that a lot of people share. So in answering the questions to the test, which were like, okay, well, would you rather spend time in groups? Do you find yourself getting irritable after a certain amount of time with people? Does it take you more time to verbalize your thoughts? Those kind of questions. Just in answering them, I realized, this is a real thing. I'm not horribly flawed. There's not something terribly wrong with me. Actually, a lot of people are like this. So for me, that allowed me to release a lot of guilt. And I know it's the same for a lot of other introverts out there when they discover that this is okay, it's natural, it's normal, it's a personality type. they feel a lot less guilt. They feel a lot less shame. So that was the first time that I kind of shifted my thinking around my personality. But of course, a lot of things are ingrained, right? You grow up being told that you should act a certain way. And when you fail to do so, then you really internalize the feelings of guilt and the feelings of not being good enough. So it took years and years and years to actually release most of the guilt. And I think, there's still a little bit that lingers, that comes up in certain situations, comes up every now and then. But the second time that things really changed for me was, I've shared this story before, but your audience hasn't heard it, so I'll share it again. It was during a trip to New Zealand. I had been traveling with a number of other travelers, and as many introverts know, it can be exhausting traveling, and it can be exhausting, especially doing it with other people, doing it in a group. Normally I travel alone, but I spent a couple of days with these other travelers, visiting nearby islands, going to pubs, seeing main attractions. And so all was well, all was good. I was enjoying my time with these other travelers until all of a sudden my energy crashed. And like most introverts, when my energy tanks are empty or near empty, I begin to retract, I shut down, and I stop talking. And this is a necessity, actually, because we introverts, we get overstimulated really easily. So what we do to cope is obviously to shut out that stimulation. So that's what I did, and I'm sure a lot of introverts can relate to what happened next. A very extroverted man called me out on the fact that I wasn't interacting as much anymore. I wasn't smiling, I wasn't laughing, I wasn't talking with everybody. And I tried to explain to him that it was because I'm an introvert. And, sometimes I just need to be alone. I need some space so that I can recharge. And he just looked at me like I was crazy. He did not get it. And he just persisted and said, no, you need to, seize the moment and be more social and talk to people. And I actually had a meltdown because keep in mind, my energy tanks were already low. This was after hours and hours of socializing and going from place to place. So I burst into tears and I just felt horrible and embarrassed. And so it was in that moment that I realized, hey, this isn't right. I know there are other people that feel this way. I was lucky enough that I'd been exposed to information on introversion, so I knew that I wasn't the only one. So I thought, hey, if I feel this way, then, and if I have these kinds of experiences, then there must be other introverts who have these experiences too, and that's not right. I want to show people that that it's okay to be an introvert, and I want to educate people so that they don't have these horrifying experiences, so that they know that it's okay to say no, and that it's okay to set boundaries, and you don't have to feel guilty about it. So I think in that moment of deciding to help other people, I really empowered myself, and that's when the process of releasing the shame and guilt really began.
Nice. And that's a really powerful story because you basically reached a point where you had kind of an epiphany about yourself. And I just love the notion of self-discovery and just knowing more about yourself because, let's face it, you're going to be with yourself your entire life. So you might as well kind of know your immediate surroundings yourself really well. And I feel like in a very real way, that's what you do is you help empower people to kind of take more ownership over their lives and their own psychology and the way that they respond to people in social situations and say like, okay, you know what? I can thrive, but the only way I can do that is if I know more about myself so that I can either give myself that recharge time or I can maybe just shut down the engines and get things back to neutral before I re-engage.
Yes, absolutely. And just going back to the comment that you brought up from one of my readers, it was Helen or Helena. So she said she replaces her shoulds with the coulds, and I love that because it shows, yes, I have a choice. That's really what it comes down to is, like you say, taking control of your own psychology, your own life, and recognizing, yeah, you could go out or you could stay home. You could choose to, spend your time in a group, and you could choose to exert a lot of energy in that way, or you could choose to just spend 20 minutes at the party and then go home and recharge. You always have a choice. It's your life.
Right. And and I love that thought because it really feels like should is sort of almost taking away all the other options, and it's saying that there's this predetermined path to anything in life. And as soon as we start replacing some of our coulds, because the reality is they're all coulds, when we replace those coulds with shoulds, I have a feeling that you might, if you're the type of person that does that, you might wake up in 6 or 7 years and say like, oh no, I've made a horrible mistake, because you've been living someone else's life and not yours.
Where did my life go?
Yes.
There's this, I have to share.
Go for it.
There's this wonderful scene in the movie Boyhood. Have you seen it?
I have not.
Okay, well, everybody should see it. I believe it won Best Picture this past year in the Academy Awards. And so there's this amazing scene where the mother in the film has this moment of realization. Her son is going off to school, and she says, I just thought there would be something more. She kind of has, like, she's in tears, she has a breakdown, and she thinks, this is what happened. Like, I was going through life, and there was this marriage and this divorce, and we raised the kids, and I thought there would be more. And then, finally, she reaches this point where she recognizes, oh no, actually, this is your life happening right now. Like, it's not about waiting to get somewhere. Something's not going to magically happen and you're going to be like, oh yes, I've arrived. No, it's about this moment. So every moment you have to choose to live your own authentic life.
That's a really, yes, I love it. Because it's so true, because there are so many moments in life where if you haven't experienced these moments yet and you think, okay, then I'll be set, or then I'll have arrived. And you realize once you get to that moment, it's kind of like, oh, well, it was just a bunch of tiny moments stitched together. And it really wasn't anything, earth-shattering. And I try very, very hard to stay as much in the present as possible. I mean, I've written about how time traveling is not good. Traveling to either the future, which may or may not happen, or the past that you cannot change. It's usually a recipe for either regret or kind of pie in the sky, like, oh yeah, one day, and then sure enough, you're thinking one day too much, and then that day comes and you're still the same spot that you already are. And as a segue, because you mentioned like, I thought that there would be something more. It made me think of, for some reason, like right before a big trip, like when you're packing and when you've got your suitcase ready, or your carry-on, and those little moments of going to the airport, taking off your shoes or whatever you got to do, sitting down on the plane, and there's that moment when you kind of step off the plane, and for me it always seems to happen at airports. I kind of look around, and then I kind of have that realization I'm somewhere else. And that's maybe about as close as it gets to kind of that I've arrived moment, maybe because I've actually arrived.
Yes.
Do you, because you've traveled a lot, have you ever had that experience with your travels? kind of that. It's almost like a paradigm shift of just being in a completely different location.
You know what's so ironic, Jeff, is yes, I have traveled a lot. And I've actually experienced that feeling of I have arrived more profoundly when I've come home.
Mm.
And by home, I mean not my hometown, but now I call it my soul city because there's this city in Canada where I live. It's on Vancouver Island. And I feel like my soul has just repeatedly called me back here, even though I've lived in Australia, I've lived in Mexico City, I've spent a lot of time in Latin America and in Asia. So I've been all these places, but when I come back to the city where I live, I just feel like, whoo, I can breathe. And the energy is just, it's like it matches my energy. The pace matches my pace. The people are the kind of people that I would like to surround myself with. And so that's how I know that I'm in the right place, is because I've been all these other places and I feel so present and at peace and happy right here where I am.
Nice. And what's so funny, have you read the book, it's called Vagabonding by Rolf Potts? Have you read this?
No, I haven't.
He's a travel writer, and it's kind of like, well, for me, it's like the traveling Bible, where
Mm-hmm.
he talks about how to basically stay present, no matter where you are, if you're at home or if you're traveling. And there's one section of his book where he talks about when you come home, and how it can just kind of be. It's almost as if you're coming home, but you're sort of a different person because you've had all those new experiences.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Can you relate to that from your travels when you arrive back at that it's Vancouver Island?
Mm-hmm.
When you arrive back, do you feel like you kind of bring those experiences back with you when you come home?
Oh, definitely. And my interactions with people change when I arrive home. My relationships change. You begin to attract new people, and that's how it should be. As you change, then your environment should change with you, because you want different things and you attract different things. So yes, most definitely. I feel that every time I come back, when I've been away for a while, it's like there is that familiarity, but at the same time, I'm seeing my home from a new perspective, which is really the most exciting thing. It's why people like to travel so much. It's why I like to travel. So it's great that I can do that in my own home.
Yeah, I love that because I feel like with so many facets of our lives, we just kind of get up, go to work, drive home, and we watch Netflix or whatever it might be. And if you do that so many times in a row, you almost become numb to everything around you because it's the same. And that's kind of it. I don't know why this reminds me of this, but like if there's a big storm or a thunderstorm, that's when like everyone always gets up to look outside at the same street that they've always looked at, because there's something completely new in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
And you just gain that sort of perspective where it's like, oh, I've never noticed that street lamp. Has that street lamp always been there? And well, probably it has, but you're just noticing it now because other things are different. With your travels, because you've been literally like everywhere in the world.
Not quite,
Not
but a
quite.
lot of places.
You've hit like, I feel like you've hit most of the corners. Like you've hit Australia, South America, or Latin America.
Yep.
Canada and Asia. So
yeah,
right.
Still need to do Africa and Antarctica. But
Antarctica. So it's funny. I got married in Fairbanks, Alaska. So I probably flew over your house. I didn't know you then. So, but at some point I was like 25,000 feet above your house. And I'm so cold natured, and I went to like the coldest area of the world, save for Antarctica, to get married. It was as cold as -24 up there.
Oh my goodness.
But it was cool. We saw the Northern Lights and all that good stuff. And yeah, it's an experience being somewhere new because you're just surrounded by so much stimulus. And how do you balance that being someone who's more introverted and kind of saving that energy because you've got all this outside stimulus in the environment? Or is it more of you, even if you were somewhere new, if you're by yourself, you're okay because that tank is not being run dry from social interaction?
Yeah, definitely. That is a really good question. And I do not want to give people the wrong impression. I think when people imagine my travels, they imagine me like this renegade adventurer, and I've got my backpack and going from city to city. And it wasn't like that. I really.
That's exactly what I imagine. I mean,
I really tailored my travels to my personality because I had to out of necessity. There is no way I would have been able to sustain the amount of travel that I've done. So I was gone from Canada when I was traveling through Latin America. I was gone from Canada for an entire year. So I really took my time. I like to say I lived in other countries. That is a more accurate way of portraying it than like seeing me as the vagabond, because of that year I actually lived in Mexico City for 7 months, and I spent 2 months in Colombia. There was really only about a month where I was kind of hopping from city to city, and even then I was spending the least amount that I spent was 7 days, I think, in one place. No, that's not true. I took a boat over from Panama, a speedboat from the edge of Panama to Colombia, to the edge of Colombia. Now, that was kind of a renegade traveler experience. That was my only experience like that.
It sounds like an action movie. Like, yeah, I was taking a speedboat, and then like there was a gang shooting at us, and there's explosions.
Yes, it does sound like that. And actually, that was the scariest and the most adventurous part of my trip. And I'm glad I did it. But if I had done the whole trip like that, I would not have survived. I would have had a mental breakdown. So yes, that was the only part that was like that. The rest of the time, really, I spent good chunks of time in each place. And the reason I do that is because I get so exhausted by the pressure, the feeling that you should take in all of the sights and the scenery in such a short amount of time. If I only have that amount of time, then what if it's a time when my energy tanks are low? Well, then it's going to be unpleasant for me to be bouncing from one site to another, one tourist destination to another. So I really prefer to spend a longer period in a place and actually, feel like I live there. I can spend my weekdays just, visiting cafes and really building a life. And then on the weekends, I can go and see museums, or I can go to a nearby city or go to the beach.
Yeah, I like that because it's more experiential than just kind of hopping from one thing to the other. Now, your travels mostly or all solo, is that correct?
Yes. So I always traveled alone, but I always met up with people as well. I did a lot of couch surfing, and then I also would sometimes go to meetups. I would meet friends. But the reason why I like to actually travel solo is because I had freedom. So I never had to ask people, or I rarely had to ask people, oh, do you think we should do this? Where should we go next? I could set my own pace is pretty much why I did it that way.
Yeah, there's a lot of advantages to kind of going solo sometimes because you get that ultimate freedom. Because really sometimes, especially if you're in a group, the most exhausting thing to me is like if you're around a group that's trying to make up their mind like where to go to eat or something like that. And it's just you know what, I won't eat. That's fine. I don't want to. I'll never eat again. Let's just not go back and forth.
Oh.
I've had a lot of success with proposing things to do. I'm a big believer. I'm a planner, kind of by
Mhm.
nature. For better or worse, it's a double-edged sword. Horrible if you're trying to get something done on a tight deadline, but wonderful if you're trying to pick out a restaurant to eat. You can look at a few restaurants in the area and say, okay, well I've heard such and such place is really good. Let's go there, and if it sucks, we can always go somewhere else. And the people are like, oh, thank God, because they don't have to go back and forth and say, what do you want to do? No, what do you want to do? Ah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yes. That's so funny because I think we're the opposite. Well, in that respect, I'm not a planner. So I would go to places and people would ask me, "Oh, how long are you here for?" And I'd say, well, I don't know. I'm just going to see how I feel, and I don't know if I'm going to see this thing or that thing. I'm just going to see how I feel, see how it goes." And so that's how it is usually. But I mean, keep in mind, I had a long amount of time, and I know most people don't have that luxury when they travel. This was something I set out to do, and I had some savings, and I was traveling very frugally. But if you do have a short amount of time to travel, uh, as an introvert and you don't want to get overstimulated, I'd say solo travel is a great option where you just meet up with people, where you have a lot of freedom. I don't think that signing up for a tiki tour or kontiki tour or whatever it's called is the best thing for an introvert, where it's just like go 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 and everything's regimented, and you have to squeeze so much into a day. I don't think that's the best. Mind you, I would love to go on like a yoga retreat or some sort of cleansing retreat or a bikini boot camp or something like that. I think that would be really cool, as long as I feel like I have enough freedom to recharge and to be alone.
yeah, I like that, and it actually makes me want to ask you, um, on a daily basis, like how do you prefer to recharge? Are there any rituals that you do where you if you meditate or something like that to actively try to recharge yourself? Maybe if you know you have some sort of event that evening or something like that.
Yeah, there are definitely different things that I do. I do meditate. I meditate if I know I'm going to be very busy or socializing a lot. I actually do try to meditate for at least 5 minutes a day.
That's so funny because I'm trying to form the habit right now, and I am a big fan of setting the bar on the ground because
Hmm.
you can't be trusted to jump over anything, even if it's like 1 centimeter off the ground. So that's my goal as well. Try to do just a 5 minute break, and I try to do that in the morning to kind of kick my day off on a centered note. Uh,
Hmm.
do you do like any apps or anything like that? I use the Calm app, and it seems to work pretty well. It just has little if you do like a 5 or a 10 minute, you can do a little timer, and it rings a gong when you're done. But it is so difficult to sometimes just clear your mind because I feel like,
Hmm.
and I would love to get your thoughts on this. There's so much stimulation uh, in our everyday lives, be it a Facebook news feed or what have you. There's just so
Hmm.
much information incoming, and many days I feel like I lose the battle of trying to be selective with the amount of information that I intake because it's easy to get overstimulated with that.
Hmm. Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. This is an important topic that is always on my mind, because people forget that electronics are very stimulating. Even reading is a form of stimulation. So it's like we never give ourselves time to turn off our brain. That's why meditation is so powerful. I mean, you could just sit there and stop thinking. That's pretty much the same as meditating. And if it helps, just think of it that way. Just think of it as, okay, I'm going to have some time during my day where I just sit there and stare at the wall, or I just sit there and I don't listen to any music. I turn off all the noise, and I don't look at any kind of electronics. I don't look at a screen. I'm just kind of sitting there and being with myself. And it is difficult. It's difficult to turn off your brain at first, but it's one of those things that it does get easier. And it gets easier. I mean, it's easier on certain days as well, certain times. That's why I think the morning is really great, because your mind hasn't filled up with all your to-dos yet. So
Yes.
first thing is great. And if you can do it in the evening right before bed, I find it can work really well then too, and you tend to sleep better.
Yeah, I love that. I've not been doing this as it's like a confession hour. Like, yeah, here are the things that I'm not great at. I've been trying to write in a journal. It's actually this really cool thing called the 5 minute journal, and what it is it's very much like a Mad Libs for being grateful. And uh, at the beginning of your day, you might say like, here are 3 things that I would like to do today. Here's a daily affirmation. I am blank or blank. And at the end of the day, you say, here are 3 awesome things that happened today. Blank, blank, blank.
Mm.
And I've been trying to be more consistent with that, because I feel like being reflective of your day is really important, as far as just setting yourself in a kind of a grateful mood, because I feel like it's very easy to just put your head down and get on that hamster wheel. So just getting a little bit of altitude and a little bit of distance away from, I guess your lizard brain, your like hamster wheel brain, definitely helps a lot. It's called the 5 minute journal, but it's pretty awesome.
The 5 minute journal. Did you say that's an app or?
It's man, that would be awesome if it was an app. It's actually a physical journal. I think.
Oh, okay.
I know they have a website. I think it's probably just if you Google the 5 minute journal, and it's a beautiful book, and you set down screens and you actually write in it, and it's pretty cool. Like, I was going back and looking at some old entries, and it's like today I played with my cat, and that's what made it an awesome day, because it's usually not those kind of grand gestures that we think like that's what makes an awesome day. It's the small moments sometimes where you just kind of reset a little bit, which is really cool.
Yes, most definitely. Yes, I'm into journaling as well. And I find when I do like a gratitude list, then that's a great time for me to reflect on the smaller things. And I start to realize, oh, my day was actually better than I thought it was. Because you go through, I think within just one day, you can go through so many ups and downs with your energy, with your emotions, with your thoughts. So it's great to actually sit down and reflect on those positives and on those moments where you felt good, you felt happy, you felt at peace, you felt grateful.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw you a little bit of a curveball, or maybe a slider. I'm a baseball fan, so you'll have to forgive me, because we've talked a lot about having that, I guess, that gratitude piece, getting away from shoulds. How have you been able to tie some of that in with your business? Because are you the only person at Introvert Spring, or do you have a team with you? Because I'm solo at Become More Compelling, and it's all on me. I'm the CEO, but I'm also the marketer and all this other stuff, the content creator, the talent, the pretty face. I'm everything. So how do you use some of these to kind of be like Zen with the things that you do with introvertspring.com?
Yes. So at the moment, it is a one-woman show. I do foresee getting an assistant soon. But so I can totally relate to what you're saying is you do have to wear a lot of different hats. And, even if you did have a team, you would still have to wear a lot of different hats. And that's what I like a lot about what I do. But at the same time, I am very conscious of what my real job is, what my real purpose is, and what my mission is. Because that's so easy to forget. It's so easy to become a professional email answerer. Let me tell you.
Oh my gosh.
And You can relate?
I can definitely relate. And yeah, I try. I mean, I respond to a ton of email just because I want to have all those touches with my readers, because I just think it's really important, because there are people that are going to be listening to this that I personally emailed back and forth, and but there's always a lot of it coming in, you might say.
Yes, yes. And so I like to remind myself all the time that my number one priority is to create and to connect. So I structure my day that way. When I wake up in the morning, there's only a couple things that I will do first thing in the morning, and one is sometimes I'll meditate, but most of the time I'll just dive right into writing. And because that way I know I've done my most important thing first. I've created something. I've created something that is going to connect with a lot of people. So that is my most important job. And so if some emails don't get answered, or if it takes a long time to answer them, or if some of the comments on my website don't get responded to, well, I forgive myself because I've done my most important task. And, I would feel very upset if I couldn't do my most important task because I was so busy doing all of this administrative stuff. So yes, I wear a lot of hats, and I do a lot of things. I do answer emails, but when push comes to shove, I know my purpose. I know my mission is really to help introverts. And the most powerful way that I can do that is through my writing.
And you said something extremely key that I want to call out from that. You forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not a very woo-woo person. Like, I'm very kind of tactical, and like with my clients, like if they ask me like, or if they say like, oh yeah, I didn't get this done, and I'm like, okay, why was that? And then I'll just kind of, gently guide them to where I want them to go, like an evil genius. But forgiveness, like sometimes it's really important, and it goes for if you're building a business, or if you just didn't do the laundry that day. Like, being able to forgive yourself, that's a skill by itself, and I feel like it's something that, kind of going back to the shoulds, that probably should be coulds. That's messed up. Being able to actually stop for a second and say like, okay, you know what, today was not my greatest day, but I forgive myself. Let's reset and try it tomorrow. Because if you have too many of those days where you don't give yourself that kind of like that side hug, then I mean, I don't know about you, but I would start spiraling down and say like, oh no, I'm just a failure. What am I even doing? And yeah, and then it gets really, really bad. So I just wanted to call that out, because I think it's really key.
I feel like saying amen. Hallelujah. It's so true. Yes. I think for introverts especially, being able to forgive yourself is really important. I've learned this in working with introverts, because I realize so many of them are holding on to all this guilt and shame. And the thing is that they really want to do it right. I mean, we all do. We all want to get it right. We're doing our best. We want to be good people. And so if we feel like we're not living up to our own standards, it's really hard to forgive ourselves. It's harder to forgive ourselves than it is to forgive, people that we hold grudges against. So I consciously have forgiveness practices. I'm a bit woo-woo, so I do a lot of different things. I actually have done like tapping, EFT tapping for forgiveness. I do a lot of journaling exercises. I write love letters to myself, all sorts of things, because, it's all about living consciously. These things, changing your mindset, it's not an easy task. You have to do it consciously. And so, these exercises, I know you do, or you teach a number of different exercises to your audience, and so do I. And the reason is because you have to actually do these things to replace the ingrained thinking and the ingrained actions that you're so used to.
Yes. like grooves in a record. If you keep doing the same things that you've always done, you're going to get the same results you've always gotten. Now, I have to ask, what is this tapping thing? Because I've never heard of this.
You've never heard of EFT tapping?
I don't.
Emotional freedom technique. Well, then I know that you're not woo-woo. You're not new age. So it's actually scientifically proven that it works. And so it's based on acupuncture pressure points. So you tap on these different pressure points in your body while saying these different phrases that are meant to help you to release things that your body is holding on to, that your mind, your body is is holding on to. They call it cellular memory. To release them and then to replace them with new beliefs. So, I thought even just the phrases, saying the phrases is really powerful because you're saying, I release this guilt. Even though I feel so bad, I feel like I did something wrong, I love myself and I forgive myself. So just being able to speak that truth out loud, it's powerful.
Yeah. And it's funny, I actually have, it's not quite the same thing, but there's a concept called anchoring where it's similar. I actually have, if I'm feeling, I guess, nervous or trepidatious, especially if I'm heading into a social situation, I actually have this thing where I'll rub my thumb. I'm doing it now. I'll rub my thumb on the inside of my left wrist, and it's an anchor point for me because I over many years I would do sort of affirmations and listen to songs that made me feel really powerful, and I would, at like the crescendo, I would do that same action where I would rub my thumb on the inside of my wrist, and then that's an anchor point for me. So when I do that, I immediately kind of conjure up, almost on like a subconscious level, all those emotions kind of flood back. Because I've kind of done the hard work and reprogrammed. Now I don't really have to think of affirmations very much when I do that. It's just kind of on a very basic level. It happens every time I do it.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's pretty much the same concept. And it's so funny how everybody's kind of teaching the same thing, just with a different voice, with different packaging. And the packaging and the voice is important because you want to resonate with a specific group of people. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and so, wow, we just completed the horseshoe. Like, there's woo-woo, and then there's me, and I'm, like, right next to you now. It was a long way around. But, yeah, so that. I feel like that's really, really awesome to have those kind of things, because I remember when I was just kind of starting out improving my charisma and improving my social skills that, I would still get very, very nervous when I was heading into a social situation. And now, over 10 years, being able to kind of take myself from unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. It's always a journey. You're always improving, but it's funny how there are so many different things that you can do to make yourself more comfortable in situations. Because I find that if you make yourself comfortable, then the people you're talking to are also going to feel comfortable because you're already comfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Can you think of a time when you've actually made yourself comfortable in a social situation? Make sure I'm phrasing this right. Have you ever had a time when you've had to kind of go that extra mile and make yourself comfortable so that you can have a deeper connection with someone?
Can you give me another example of what you mean by that?
Like, I'm just kind of picturing, like, say you're going to a dinner party and maybe you only know a single other person, and you know that there's going to be a lot of new people around. How would you tell someone to, if they were asking you this question and they were an introvert, how would you tell them to approach that situation so that they could make themselves more comfortable first? So that the rest of the night would just kind of flow a little smoother.
Definitely. Well, there's so many different things. And a lot of it happens before you even go into that situation. Yes. But one really key thing is shifting your mindset and getting out of the beggar's mindset that so many introverts adopt. The beggar's mindset is, they won't want to talk to me. They're doing me a favor by talking to me, by paying attention to me. So getting away from that and thinking, no, you're giving them a gift by giving them your presence and giving them your full attention. So instead of going in like, tentatively just tiptoeing in and thinking like, oh, they don't want to talk to me anyway, so I'm not going to go all in. You go in with your full presence, knowing that you're giving them a gift by actually showing up for them. And that, hey, this is a risk for them too. They might feel vulnerable. And so that mindset shift of hey, you're the one giving something, and you're like you're not the beggar, you're the one extending your friendship. That really changes things.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating because one thing that I've noticed with people that are starting, well, maybe they've even gone a few steps down the path of improving their social skills, improving their charisma. When they start to have some of those successes, then they immediately sort of jump to like an imposter syndrome sort of mentality where they say like, oh, who am I? People know, and
Mm-hmm.
they think like they're literally trying to Charles Xavier the other person and read their thoughts and assuming that they know that their thoughts are right. They're trying to, they believe that they're a mind reader and that they're 100% accurate, which is crazy when you think about it. But
Mm-hmm.
I've done it too. And when you say the beggar's mindset, that really makes me think of that because especially if you start to have some successes, then if you're kind of not having a good day, you might think like, oh, they don't really want to talk to me. Look, they're probably looking around trying to get someone else to save them from this conversation or whatever it is. There's
Yes.
actually, I was reading, there's a concept in aviation that sometimes a pilot will say that they're trying to stop the plane from moving back and forth and they're really nervous and they're really thinking about that. Well, the subtle movements that they do, they may actually increase the likelihood of that to happen. It's like an oscillation fallacy, I think is what it's called.
Yes.
And it's crazy when you think of that because that directly applies to social situations and there's something called safety behaviors where you're trying to like say you're at that dinner party and maybe your safety behavior is you're not talking because you don't think you have anything good to say. Well, that's going to make it probably less likely someone might strike up a conversation because you kind of gravitated to the outside edge of the circle and maybe now you're sitting down. And it's all that safety behavior. You're trying to keep yourself safe, which is fine,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not getting you the results that you necessarily want.
Exactly.
And that's it's fascinating because I feel like there's so much untapped, sort of learning that we can do about our own subconscious and how maybe we're subtly not quite like a law of attraction kind of thing because that gets a little bit too woo woo for me.
Yeah.
But I agree with the principle that you are, by your subtle actions that you probably don't know that you're doing, like that pilot that's trying to stop the plane from going to side, you're probably inviting some stuff in that you could avoid if you get some perspective on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So true.
So we're almost done with the hour, but I definitely you have a wonderful free gift for my readers, which I am super excited about. It's seven the 7 steps for true connections. Is that correct?
Yeah, Alone but Not Lonely, Seven
Yes.
Steps to True Connection for Introverts. It's my 50-page ebook.
And how to create meaningful connections with people, basically.
Yeah, how to create meaningful connections with the right people as an introvert, because you don't want those superficial acquaintances where you're constantly having to make boring small talk. This is all about how to actually navigate small talk and create those true meaningful connections with the right people.
With this ebook, what kind of things are my readers going to learn, specifically when it comes to kind of bridging the gap from small talk to a deeper conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So they're going to learn conversation igniters for getting things going. They're going to learn how to manage their energy needs before they go out and socialize, so that they go out with full tanks. They're going to learn how to attract the right people and how to know what that looks like for them. Well, what is the right person for me? And they're also going to learn how to actually take things to a deeper level, because that's really important to introverts. They don't just want to skim the surface with people. Ultimately, they want to have those friendships that are going to last, where you get each other and where you feel accepted and you feel like you can be yourself. So that's what my ebook shows introverts how to do.
I love that. And yes, if you're an introvert, that's obviously going to work really, really well for you. I'm an extrovert by nature, and I'm still going to check it out because I know that I can always learn something from anyone. And I'm really excited to share that with Become More Compelling readers. I think that they're really going to dig it. So that concludes our first episode. Michaela, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And I'm really glad zombies didn't come in at the beginning of this and ruin all of our fun.
Awesome. Great. All right. Thank you so much, Jeff. That was fun.
Yeah. You have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.